Now, Dan was on Twitter the other day talking about cases that he was going to be pursuing, or the FBI was reinitiating or such. Let's put the tweet up and I'll let the tweet speak for itself. Let's go to number 22. Thanks for following this account and allowing us to update you about what we're doing at your FBI. A few updates. Okay, they're going to have a reform team in place, et cetera, et cetera. They said, shortly after swearing in, the director and I evaluated a number of cases of potential public corruption that understandably have garnered public interest. We made the decision to either reopen or push additional resources and investigative attention to these cases. These cases are the D.C. Pipe bombing investigation, the cocaine discovery of the prior administration's White House, and the leak of the Supreme Court Dobbs case. I receive requested briefings on these cases weekly, and we are making progress. If you have any investigative tips on these matters that may assist us, then please contact the FBI. And I wrote, the FBI is not capable of investigating itself. The agency should go the way of the USAID. I mean, I'm sorry, but this is not good enough. What are they going to be investigating in the cocaine case? Are they going to investigate the Secret Service? Because if there was a problem with the investigation, it was a result, I guarantee you, of political interference and corruption in the Secret Service investigation of what obviously was Hunter Biden's cocaine, or one of his buddies, or whoever. It's obviously a Biden family member responsible for the cocaine. Now, do I know that for a fact? Of course not. But do I believe that the federal government could investigate something like that and then come back credibly say, oh, well, I guess we're never going to know. It's just going to be a mystery how that cocaine got into the West Wing of the White House. It's just an eternal mystery. We'll never figure it out. So the pipe bomber investigation, which has been slow-rolled and slow-walked by the FBI, so they're going to add additional resources to an investigation that's been obstructed. Who's going to investigate the FBI's investigation of the pipe bombing issue on January 6th? Are they going to investigate the Secret Service? How it is they missed the pipe bomb and allowed Vice President Kamala Harris at the time to be within the vicinity of the pipe bomb, or one of them? And what's the third one? The Dobbs leak decision? I mean, I think that's an important issue. But wasn't there an investigation already into it? Who did it, and why wasn't anything done about it? Are they going to investigate Schumer for his threats on Supreme Court justices? Are they going to enforce the law protecting justices at their homes from being intimidated and put in harm's way by protesters? Are they going to investigate why those laws were not enforced by the prior administration? Is the FBI going to investigate the FBI? Is the FBI going to investigate the DOJ? This is why it won't work. And this is why, and it's not a criticism of, well, I don't care. People want to take it as a criticism, they can take it. They need to shut down the FBI as far as I'm concerned. It can't be trusted to investigate anything. I trust Dan to personally investigate something, but he's just one man. Cash, he's just one person. He's going to be they'll be relying on a flawed institution. A flawed institution, one that I don't think is fixable. I mean, there was a leak just today. I forget which newspaper it was. Some liberal rag, I forget, it was either the Washington Post or the New York Times, that people are concerned within the FBI that FBI agents are being asked to investigate and handle the immigration invasion. They say that it will distract from their national security related investigations. So what's the import of that, it means that there are people in the FBI who don't consider the reversal of Biden's invasion to be a national security issue. And they're leaking to the papers now. So don't tell me the FBI is salvageable. Just don't tell me. Now, practically speaking, is the FBI going to be eliminated budgetarily or even curtailed the way the Department of Education's been? Probably not. But I'm just going to keep on trying to provide some leadership on it. Where is the investigation, the broad investigation of the lawfare against Trump? Where is it? See no evidence of it. And even if it began, I don't think the FBI ethically can do it because they're compromised, they're conflicted. The same with DOJ. This is why I said it once and I will say it again. President Trump, as the chief prosecutor, prosecutor-in-chief, the executive magistrate, should direct the prosecution, investigation of the deep state assault on America. Set up a separate investigative unit reportable to him. He can direct the investigations. He can direct the prosecutions. He can take advice and counsel from Pam Bondi and anyone else he wants, but he's the prosecutor-in-chief. I mean, we've been talking about, the news has been talking about, well, thanks to Judicial Watch's release of this, forcing the release of the audio of Joe Biden's rambling answers to the special counsel Hur that they tried to cover up. We caught them red-handed trying to change and successfully changing, it looks like, transcripts to hide how awful he was. But Comey was in contempt of Congress for hiding that audio. Why hasn't he been prosecuted? It's been weeks. Low-hanging fruit, as it's often said. And if I were the president, I'd call up the Attorney General and say, you need to prosecute Mr. Garland for the obstruction, the contempt of Congress. I mean, Comey's still walking around a free man after threatening to murder the president or advocating for the murder of the president. Let's go to clip. What's the clip of him being on that TV show? Is it 12?
I can't believe this guy hasn't been arrested yet.
This. You were walking down the beach. What happened? You were walking down the beach, and you saw this on the beach?
Yeah, my wife and I, Patrice, were walking on the beach and saw those numbers in shells on the beach. And
you didn't do this. Somebody else did this.
Yeah, somebody else did it. We were on a walk preparing for this week,
right.
The rollout of my book.
Yep.
She looked at it and said, why'd someone put their address in the sand?
All right.
And then we stood at it, trying to figure, looked at it, trying to figure out what it was. And she'd long been a server in restaurants. And she said, you know what I think it is?
Yeah.
I think it's a reference to restaurants when you would 86 something in a restaurant.
Right, it's off the menu.
Yeah. I said, no, I remember when I was a kid, you'd say 86 to get out of a place. This place stinks, let's 86 it.
Right, I was a bartender. You would 86 a customer if they were getting drunk. Like, let's 86 them. Let's, like, give them a low-proof alcohol, something like that. Yeah.
And so I said, I think it's a clever political message. And she said, you should take a picture of it. I said, sure. And then she said, you should Instagram that. And boom.
Yeah, I thought it was a clever political message. My wife, who's a server, who talks like that? It was her rehearsed, absurd story that obviously is fake. Why hasn't he been prosecuted yet? And Dan Bongino was on, rightly complaining about the increase in death threats the FBI now has to investigate because of Comey's corruption. Let's go to 19.
I got to tell you, of all the things that have surprised me in the close to now 3 months I've been here, is the depravity of Jim Comey. This man is a disgrace to the badge, the FBI, and the country. What he's doing right now, one, going out and taking shots at Cash. Cash doesn't belong. Cash was the chief of staff at the Department of. Cash is a patriot. Cash has served in numerous high-level roles, taking personal shots while you're on the beach, implying a threat towards the president and blaming your wife about it. And let me just add about James Comey, Saint Comey, who walks around there moralizing to everyone how wonderful of a human being he is. What you said is absolutely accurate. We have wasted countless man hours now running out tips to our tip line about people putting 8647 because of Jim Comey, because he cannot control himself and his emotions. He is a child. He is a big child. And let me tell you one more thing. Jim Comey, who wants you to believe, Jim Comey taking a shot at the president. Oh, look at me, I'm such a victim. The president's going after me. He's making a ton of money on this book. The only person that got prosecuted was the president. Jim Comey, we're finding stuff even now.
So why hasn't he been prosecuted? I agree with Dan. Dan's analysis is right on. Now, to be fair to Dan, he's not the prosecutor. It's the Justice Department. '86, the President of the United States, and he's expecting us to believe it's just like cutting someone off who got drunk at a bar? Good Lord. And given his hatred for Trump, talk about motive, he was fired by Trump. There's a Judicial Watch uncovered, forced out the truth. He stole classified information. He stole Trump's FBI files and then leaked them. Attorney General Barr at the time gave him a get-out-of-jail-free card for that outrageously. He spied on Trump. Yeah, so it stands to reason he would want to see him dead and threaten his life and make a clever political statement. So, I see Congress is going to be looking at the issue of Biden next week, or the next few weeks. They're going to be calling individuals to talk about whether or not who was running the White House, given Biden's corruption. They should be demanding this Justice Department and this FBI get on it. Now, do I think they were able to get on it? No, but at least we need to have a focus that these issues are important. Trying to get the president killed is important. That needs to be, there needs to be some law enforcement there. Trying to jail a president simply because you don't like his politics and he disputed an election, that's a terrible abuse of power that's criminal in nature. Targeting other Americans over their free speech rights related to elections. That's a terrible abuse of power. I mean, Ed Martin, before Tom Tillis, the Republican senator, torpedoed his nomination, was looking in the U.S. Attorney's Office when he was acting there about the abuses of the January 6ers. How did that happen? Remember, they placed a charge or put people in jail based on a charge the Supreme Court found overwhelmingly to be unfounded application of the law. Who's responsible for that abuse of power? Was it criminal? I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on over there. I don't. They're doing some great work on issues that we all care about. There's no doubt about that. But we also care about these issues. You know why? Because we almost lost our country because of what they did. And if there's nothing done about it, we're going to lose it. We're going to lose our country because the same crowd eventually will come back into power. And they'll do it all over again. And they might succeed in ways they weren't able to against the superhero President Trump, who, for the grace of God, was able to survive these abuses of him. I don't know if there'll be another candidate who would be similarly be able to survive this targeting. So the big news here in Washington, D.C. is the great move by President Trump to federalize the police in Washington, D.C. and deploy the National Guard to deal with the out-of-control crime problem. Under the Home Rule law that governs Washington, D.C., the president can take over the police department more or less for 30 days. He is the commander-in-chief of the National Guard and so can deploy it without having to ask anyone to deploy it in Washington, D.C. to address the out-of-control crime problem. And yes, it is out of control. Anyone who tells you crime in Washington, D.C. is okay or going down is oblivious, lying, or doesn't live here. And I don't think the oblivious category comprises anyone substantial. The lying category, as you know, is a large crowd, and everyone else pretending that crime in D.C. is okay doesn't live here. There isn't a person who lives here who thinks crime is okay and that it's sufficiently low to provide you the safety and security you deserve as a United States citizen, let alone what is necessary for a functioning capital of a major power such as the United States of America. I mean, if you can't come into our nation's capital as a federal employee, as a foreign diplomat, as a worker, someone doing business with Washington, D.C., someone touring Washington, D.C., a U.S. citizen coming to Washington, D.C. to petition their government under the First Amendment because you're in fear for your life and your personal safety, there's something seriously wrong. And under our Constitution, Congress has the authority to run the city, and they've basically delegated it to a corrupt local system that lets criminals run amok. The public safety is secondary to anything else they do, which is essentially promoting socialism and spending tax dollars. It's a nightmare here in the city. I'm a D.C. resident. I know it. In fact, I'm a D.C. As of today, I think I'm the only appointee to the D.C. government by President Trump. In addition to being Judicial Watch president, I'm a member of the Commission on Judicial Disabilities and Tenure, which is a body which oversees the ethics and the reappointment of Superior Court judges and Court of Appeals judges for the District of Columbia. And those are the local, what you would think of as the local judges here. They're appointed initially by the president and confirmed by the Senate. But as commissioner, I've been a commissioner for 5 years now, provided my views on election renomination or judicial renominations and to President Biden and President Trump. But I've seen up close and personal the dysfunction of the courts, some of which aren't the court's fault, and the dysfunction of the D.C. government generally. I issued this tweet the other day which described or summarized my concerns. I fully support President Trump's decision to take control of D.C. police and deploy the National Guard to restore the rule of law in Washington, D.C. And then I go into this issue about me being on the commission. I have witnessed up close the dysfunction and failures of the D.C. courts, federal and local prosecutors, and local D.C. government in protecting the public safety. I mean, even our commission can't get its work done because of this dysfunction. I know directly, for instance, that my commission is now unable to review a backlog of judicial complaints. These are ethics complaints due to lack of previously promised support from the mayor's office. So the mayor was promising us help, and we haven't gotten what's been promised. The judicial misconduct complaints may have serious ramifications for the public safety, but the commission doesn't have the staff or the budget to fully review them. So can you imagine, having complaints potentially about judges, and that if the complaints pan out could lead to, disclosure of judicial misconduct that has a public safety component? There could be those types of complaints in our system right now that our commission can't look at because we're unable to because of lack of resources. I mean, that's how out of control things are. And we're just one aspect, an important one, of the judicial system and a criminal justice system here in Washington, D.C. Our nation's capital is in crisis. There should be a top-to-bottom review of D.C. governance, Adding federal control of the police and National Guard resources is certainly necessary, but won't be sufficient to address the systemic, corrupt, and wasteful governance failures under home rule. President Trump took an important first step that I hope will ultimately lead to the rescue of my city. And it's your city too. It's your nation's capital. That's why the capital isn't part of a state. It's why the capital is controlled by Congress, because we all have an interest in the nation and a well-run center of culture, commerce, arts, and certainly government. And the left has zero interest in protecting that. They only see the district as a potential 51st state, which is absurd on its face and unconstitutional in my view, so they can get 2 more left-wing senators. And people like me, and frankly, there are many liberals who work in the city. They work in the commissions I'm talking about, or on the courts. The judges aren't Republican for the most part. And I think, I might disagree personally with some of their rulings in terms of being soft on crime, but I know they've got a lot of work to do, and they're completely overwhelmed. In large measure because the D.C. Council is out of control and leftist. And it's just your typical big city run by leftists. And we see this dysfunction in other cities, which in my view is intolerable for those cities as well. It's doubly intolerable for here in Washington, D.C. I mean, what got the president's personal attention, he's been very focused on this since he's come back, because he was outraged when he saw how horrible D.C. was when he got here to begin with in the first term. This young man, his nickname is Big Balls, a funny nickname. He was a member of the Doge team. I think he still was working in some capacity for the federal government. And he nearly was beaten to death after he tried to rescue a woman who was being hassled or carjacked or something. And there's story after story of federal officials, congressional staff, members of Congress being victimized by crime. And crime, I don't know if it's, quote, going down, as Judge Pirro has noted, going down from what to what? From rampage to mob violence? I mean, who are they kidding? No one buys it. I mean, look at this video the other day. I mean, it's so illustrative of why the city is dysfunctional. This leftist attacking the police the other day. This is my note is number 11, sandwich thrower.
Go fucking way! You bitch!
Motherfucker!
Oh! 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 You fucking gun! Fucking gun! Fucking gun!
Hey, good day!
So that punk had reportedly a salami sandwich that he threw at the police, and he got arrested. He's facing charges. And you know what? He works at the Justice Department, or at least used to work at the Justice Department. Another reason why I don't trust the Justice Department, because that's what the Justice Department is full of people like that, frankly, from my experience, willing to do activity like that. You know, and Trump had a brilliant insight into the impact this kind of chaos and anarchy has on visitors to the city. And he talked about his dear old dad. Let's go to number 16.
City, my father always used to tell me, I had a wonderful father, very smart, and he used to say, son, when you walk into a restaurant and you see a dirty front door, don't go in, because if the front door is dirty, the kitchen's dirty also. Same thing with the Capitol. If our Capitol's dirty, our whole country is dirty, and they don't respect us. So it's a very good question, actually.
I mean, he's always got the great insight. I know my family was talking about that quote the other day, and the story was my grandmother simply refused to eat in restaurants. refused to eat them. And so his father was probably of my grandmother's ilk when it came to the cleanliness of restaurants back in the day. But that's true. It's like the broken windows theory, right? That Rudy Giuliani famously implemented in cleaning up New York successfully. He said, you know, if all the windows are broken, it just undermines confidence in the public safety and invites more crime. Because it shows the rule of law, really, that civilization is kind of not running things. Civil society is broken down. And that's true in Washington, D.C. I mean, my concern about Washington, D.C. is that there are not enough National Guard, not enough federal resources. It's a big city. You need a lot of people to be deployed. It's not just in the high crime areas, it's in the so-called low crime areas where low crime is still too high. There isn't an area of the city that is immune from the criminal class that's been allowed to run rampant. And now the DC government has sued Trump to try to restrict his ability to get the police under control and direct their law enforcement. I'm not sure what the courts are going to do there, so there's always a fight. But more power to President Trump. This home rule experiment needs to be reevaluated. Our nation's capital is being destroyed from within for decades, and it needs to stop. It needs to stop. The Epstein scandal continues to dog the Trump administration, and it all began with a memo that I thought was ill-advised, telling American citizens, a memo that was leaked, unsigned initially, by the Justice Department and the FBI, that told American citizens that, by the way, there's nothing else to be done on Epstein, and you can't have any of the additional evidence that we may have that hasn't been released yet, that provided the basis for our conclusion. So Americans reacted quite negatively, and the polls are upwards of 80% of Americans want the Epstein records released. Now, President Trump has been resistant to this Epstein issue because he's been of the belief, and it looks like he had good reason to be of the belief now, given recent events, that there's information in there that was planted or manufactured or being misused to try to target and smear him. And not only that, but he's concerned that other American citizens could be targeted and smeared as well. And he talked about this issue earlier this week, and I think it's number 25. Let's go to 25.
No, she's given us just a very quick briefing, and in terms of the credibility of the different things that they've seen. And I would say that, you know, these files were made up by Comey, they were made up by Obama, they were made up by the Biden we went through years of that with the Russia hoax, with all of the different things that we had to go through. We've gone through years of it, but she's handled it very well. And it's going to be up to her. Whatever she thinks is credible, she should release.
Yeah, and so over the weekend, he had a bit of a crisis at the Justice Department and FBI because Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, or people close to them, were attacking Pam Bondi and the Justice Department over this memo, a memo that they both signed up on, were signed off on. And Dan was threatening to quit, the credible reports are. Evidently, he hasn't quit. He's still at the FBI. But it was a crisis for the agencies, and the president has been trying to move past it, but Republicans in the House want the documents released. Speaker Johnson suggested he wants the documents released. So I don't think there is any moving past it, and I think the way to deal with it is to release the information that would be releasable under law through the Freedom of Information Act. And of course, Judicial Watch already has a major lawsuit in this regard, as I discussed last week, the day after the memo said that there'll be no more documents to be released. The Justice Department was telling the court in our case that in fact they were reviewing and considering the release and searching for records responsive to our FOIA request for the Epstein materials for possible release. So a very confusing situation to Americans. And then on top of everything else, the president was subjected to a smear operation through the Wall Street Journal that published an allegation that Trump sent a letter to Epstein that was like typed out and had some very odd language in it that was not Trumpian at all, with a signature over a picture of a cartoon picture of a naked woman. And Trump said, this is just garbage. It's a fake letter. And the Wall Street Journal ran it anyway. And so Trump, in response, he's just furious with the whole thing. He told Pam Bondi the other day, go to any grand jury you need to go to and start getting the courts to unseal particular records about the Jeffrey Epstein issue, because evidently there are records that are under seal that haven't been released yet or can't be released yet. So that's kind of where we stand. And, as I said before, there is a way forward. Release the records under FOIA. And I put out this statement the other day, and it still holds true, and it will hold true forevermore until we get all the Epstein records. Let's run that video.
So I have a simple solution to the Epstein controversy facing the Trump administration. Judicial Watch has a federal Freedom of Information Act lawsuit for the Epstein records. The Justice Department just told a court in our case last week that they're still searching for and reviewing FBI, DOJ, Epstein records. Give Judicial Watch the Epstein records. Produce what they can produce under law. Tell the American people why they are withholding any information, if indeed that's what they decide to do. But get the legal process in place so the American people have confidence that all the records possible that can be released under law are being released. Simple plan. Let's get it done.
So I'm hoping the White House is paying attention. I'm hoping the Justice Department and the FBI are paying attention. It's not for want of shouting from the mountaintops. I was on a series of programs this week trying to educate the American people about this process for releasing government records. I was on Newsmax. I was talking to Sean Spicer. I was talking to C-SPAN. Of course, I did Steve Bannon's program as well, and then OANN. Let's go to my appearance with Rob Schmidt. Let's play a portion of that, number 30 from Newsmax.
Your reaction to the contention from Dershowitz that there's just not a lot there, the courts are withholding documents. Go ahead.
Well, maybe, but that contention can be tested by, as he points out, by releasing the information. And it's my advice to the administration is to follow the FOIA law, respond to our FOIA lawsuit with records as soon as they're able. We were just in court, and they told the court that they're still reviewing records about Epstein from both the FBI and Justice Department. They didn't say when they're going to be released or if they're withholding anything. And, that was the only detail. They're still looking and reviewing. And they just have to move more quickly on that to put some of these questions to bed. You're never going to convince everyone.
No.
And then I went to Sean Spicer's program. Sean is the former spokesman for President Trump from the first term. He has a great little show. It was a great interview. I encourage you to watch the full interview because we talked about a variety of topics. But I specifically talked about Epstein with him just the other day, segment number 31. And, on the transparency side, I would err on the side of transparency. There's material that obviously is not going to be made public one way or the other. And I'm not going to prejudge what that material might be. But we've been around the block long enough to know there's some material that we will never see and may not, and it would be inappropriate for us to see. But they've kind of put a complete stonewall down on the release of any records, at least through this official memo that was signed off on by the leadership of the FBI and Justice Department. They got to lift that veil of secrecy and start erring on the side of disclosure. And I know the president's concerned that there may be people who had, incidental contact with Epstein or business contact with Epstein. And, it's not fair to put their names out there because, you can't have guilt by association. Well, that's a legitimate concern, but the American people should figure it out. In the end, yes, they can make their defenses. Many of these people are public figures anyway. They're big boys. They can do what they need to do to defend their reputations. And then, of course, I was on C-SPAN, which is always a more interesting program. I'm always a little hesitant to do C-SPAN because it means I have to sit there and listen to a bunch of callers attacking me, typically. But there are a lot of callers who are supportive of Judicial Watch. And plus, it's an opportunity to educate people, some of whom don't want to be educated. Here's my appearance on C-SPAN talking about Epstein as well, number 32. And he was killed, either by his own hand or someone else. And the American people aren't persuaded that the answers have been put out there, and I don't think everyone's convinced. I wish I could say, yeah, I'm convinced he committed suicide. I think that's probably most likely, but I'm not convinced it's the answer.
I want to share something that Laura Loomer said about this investigation. As reported by Politico, she says there should be a special counsel appointed to do an independent investigation of the handling of the Epstein files so that people can feel like this issue is being investigated and perhaps take it out of AG Pam Bondi's hands, because I don't think that she's been transparent or done a good job handling this issue. First, Tom, do you agree that there should be a special counsel? And second, do you think that the Attorney General has still has your confidence as Attorney General, or should she step down?
No, I don't think she should step down. I've long been of the view that politically sensitive investigations like this should not reside within the Justice Department and FBI. I don't trust either agency institutionally, and I've said this publicly and about other sensitive investigations that should be taking place. The president should be running them. He should be appointing prosecutors and investigators that report to him in the White House. Maybe they can use other law enforcement that don't have the apparent conflicts of interest that the Justice Department and FBI do to investigate matters such as this, a presidential prosecutorial investigative unit. And whether you want to call it a special counsel or a presidential prosecutor, but Epstein, lawfare, auto pen gate, whatever you want to call it, I don't think the Justice Department and the FBI have the confidence of the American people to get to the bottom of it. And then I was on with our friends over at OANN, Dan Ball, who was energetically questioning me about the Epstein issue.
There's no files? There is files? We can't release them? You can't release nothing? What's going on?
Well, they're not listening to me, which I've been doing Judicial Watch has been doing is literally through court encouraging transparency. We sued not only for the victims' files, but prior to that, we have a lawsuit for all the Epstein records. And what was really strange, Dan, is that they were leaking this memo that says no Americans are going to get any more information about Epstein. The next day, they're at the court telling the court in our case that they're still reviewing and searching for DOJ and FBI records about Epstein. And my solution is pretty simple. Release the records through this FOIA lawsuit that Judicial Watch has. Why? Because that process guarantees accountability for the records that are being released and explanations for the records that are being withheld. And so the American people will have an idea how many records there are, what's being withheld, if any, and why, where do they search for the records. That typically comes out through a FOIA lawsuit.
Right.
Just proceed normally. Don't send out any more weird memos. So you get the point. And we'll see what happens. The president, as I said earlier, authorized the Attorney General to begin seeking court permission to release material that would be impossible to release without court permission, such as grand jury materials. I don't know what that covers necessarily ultimately, but I can tell you what Judicial Watch is doing. We have the Freedom of Information Act lawsuit for all Epstein records. We have a second Freedom of Information Act lawsuit we filed on the death or for records concerning Virginia Giuffre, who was one of Epstein's most well-known victims. And so this process is continuing. I mean, the federal government is in court right now, the Justice Department, over our request for FBI and Justice Department records on Epstein. So either the records are going to be released or they're not going to be released, but either way, it's going to be a process through which the government will be held accountable under law. And so I would recommend, and I will say it once, I'll say it again, that they just start following the transparency law. FOIA is your friend to get beyond this, because you're going to get Congress, I suspect. I was very surprised last week to see, or this week, I guess, Mike Johnson do something or say something I thought he was going to, that was completely opposite from what I thought he was going to say. I thought he was going to say, oh no, we don't want Maxine, I'm sorry what her name is now. Oh, Maxwell, excuse me, her last name, Maxwell, the woman who's in jail now, Epstein's former associate, testifying before Congress. He said, oh yeah, I'd be in favor of that. And he called on the president, or he called on the administration to release all the Epstein records. And, you know, I do know Speaker Johnson well enough to know that's a position that he's taking that's based on the public overwhelming his colleagues with calls for Epstein records. So that tells you where the public is, that Speaker Johnson immediately said, we got to start releasing the information. So it's going to come out. And, you know, the question is it going to come out in a process that reassures the American people that things are being done properly? And I would submit our court lawsuit, and maybe I'm not trying to be self-promoting here for Judicial Watch, although why not? We're paying for this microphone, right? But it's a key way to ensure the American people that at least the rule of law is being applied to the release of the records. No more like leaks, no more binders being dropped. I think that's just the wrong approach because it doesn't allow for people to get full answers about what's being withheld and where the records were reviewed and I mean where they were searched for and other issues related to their production. So it's really a simple solution. And you know, I've been highlighting online, I say it's a simple plan to get these records released. Now, does it mean politically the issue is going to go away for the president or it will go away for the administration? I don't know. I don't know. All I know is that the American people have a right to the records. And you can't go wrong releasing records and being transparent. And the president is instinctively one of the most transparent, I think he is the most transparent president in American history. So I would encourage him to follow Judicial Watch's lead, take advantage of this Freedom of Information Act lawsuit. And of course, the Justice Department and the FBI are supposed to release records under the law because it's required, and just do what the law requires. So this Epstein mess is, as I said, it is a mess. It's a bit of a crisis for the administration because there's so much criminality associated with the targeting of Trump, and Trump would argue he's been doing all sorts of good things, and some of which worked, some of which is tremendous. As a conservative, I'm all excited. As someone who supports the rule of law, we're all excited about his efforts to control the border and shut down the border invasion, which has effectively happened. And because of actions by his Justice Department and FBI, I think ill-advised actions, he's got this scandal on his hands. And it may be unfair, but it's life. And he's got to deal with it. And thankfully, Judicial Watch has a lawsuit that will provide the people answers, if the government follows my lead and Judicial Watch's lead, to some of the questions they have about Epstein. But wait, there's more. We have a lawsuit against Illinois to clean up its voting rolls. Illinois' voting rolls are, as you might imagine, a mess. And federal law requires states to take reasonable steps to clean up the voting rolls. We've got cases active in California, Oregon, and Illinois. We've had 2 court hearings one in Oregon, one in California in recent weeks. We have one, I thought it was going to be this week, but the court changed it to next week. So there's a hearing coming up next week in Illinois in our case to clean up the voting rolls there. Now, Judicial Watch already has cleaned up 5 million names from the voting rolls thanks to our litigation and legal action. But there are millions more that need to be cleaned up. And in Illinois, we are taking steps to do so. We know that there are major issues in Illinois. And the good news is we're finally getting a little backing from the Justice Department, which for years, because it's been run by the left, even when Republicans have been running the Justice Department, in this case, they filed a statement of interest that supports Judicial Watch in our voting roll lawsuit in Illinois. The filing notes this case presents. This is what the statement of interest notes. Let me get the press release up so you can see it. There it is. This case presents, the Justice Department writes to the federal court, important questions regarding enforcement of the National Voter Registration Act. And Attorney General Harmeet K. Dillon of the Justice Department Civil Rights Division, the Trump appointee, great lawyer who's been fighting on the front lines with Judicial Watch in many cases on these issues. It is critical to remove ineligible voters from the registration rolls so that elections are conducted fairly, accurately, and without fraud. Under the National Voter Registration Act, states have the responsibility to conduct a robust program of list maintenance. The Department of Justice will vigorously enforce these requirements to ensure compliance. So up until now, it's Judicial Watch has been enforcing the requirements. During the first Trump administration, I think there was one case they came in and helped us on, meaning took our position as well in Kentucky. Other than that, they were basically AWOL. So it's good they're now at least filing statements of interest. They're also taking other legal action, following Judicial Watch's lead in the American people's desire that the laws be enforced, that the voting rolls be clean. Now, do they have to be perfect? No, they don't. But you know people move, you know people die, and they got to take reasonable steps to track that and remove people when they move away. Remove people when they die, because dirty voting rolls can mean dirty elections. Having ineligible names, having dirty names are opportunities for voter fraud. That's why the law requires their removal. And listen how bad things are in California. Judicial Watch's lawsuit details that 23 Illinois counties with a combined registration list of 980,000 voters reported removing a combined total of only 100 registrations in the last 2-year reporting period under a crucial provision of the National Voter Registration Act. This is an absurdly small number, and there's no possible way that these counties can be conducting a general program that makes a reasonable effort to cancel registrations of voters who have become ineligible because of a change of residence while removing so few registrations. I think there are hundreds of thousands of names that should have been removed. Judicial Watch's lawsuit demonstrates Illinois voter rolls are a mess, and the Justice Department is right to be concerned about the state's failures to keep them clean. So, again, Judicial Watch with the heavy lifting on Russiagate, on election integrity, including a massive case before the Supreme Court. And of course, we only do it with your support. And so if you're not supporting us, I hope I've given you, just with our first part of this show, plenty of reason to support us. Go to judicialwatch.org for the link to support our work. And if you're already supporting us, thank you. You should make another donation too. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.